You're listening to a proper podcast. It's the Alan Hudson podcast. It's proper football, proper talk.
Well, hello again. Welcome to the Alan Hudson podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. We're going to bring a touch of glamour, much needed glamour, to the podcast today because we've got a certain Angie Best, first wife of the legendary George, of course, joining us on the podcast. Before we say hello to Angie, Alan's got a couple of words to say about subscription. So over to you, Alan.
Yeah, the usual. For those of you who don't watch our podcast, if you could go on to, what is it?
YouTube.
And press the button, the subscribe button, so we can continue doing. And that's why we got Angie on today, so we can boost the numbers, you see.
No. No.
Welcome anyway, Ange.
Thank you, my love. How are you this morning?
I was discussing with Tony this morning. I think we've met in person once or twice. Once in LA, or was it? I think it was either California when George was playing there, or San Jose.
San Jose, yeah, it could be, because he didn't play in Seattle. You did, so you must have been playing against him, right?
Yeah. And I just
sounds...
very brief hello when you had your lovely curly hair. Would that be right?
Yeah.
I got you. Don't worry. I got a photo of it.
Have you really?
No. But it's great to have you on. Then, by the way, I must say before we start talking about whatever we want to talk about, you are the only female allowed on our show. We don't agree with women commentating on football.
Neither do I.
Thank you, dear. Thank you very much. We don't want that. We're all against it. And you're the only female or lady we've had on this podcast, and that will remain. So that will go down in history.
It will. Well, I'm honoured. Thank you.
Well, so are we to have you on. And
not really, boys. Not really.
Well, it's great to people, people that watch the podcast, only nosy people watch it really. And
no, it's old school, our age group, because you're a year older than me. So it's our age group who remember, who want to think back and have that memory of when it was a really good time. Back in our day, it was a good time. Today, it's a very stressful, heavy time. So people want to watch old stuff and think about people they used to love and people they used to watch and go back to when they felt good, I find, anyway.
No, we agree. We that's what we speak about all the time. The times of the 60s, the 70s, and you were obviously in London at the Swinging Kings Road. George was up in Manchester. That's before you got together and all that, which was it was like a Bond movie when you met, wasn't it? You and George. Two people. So what do we say? The beautiful game had two beautiful people in it, and when George was playing. But more about you anyway. This is about you. And how come you come back to London?
Sadly, when George died, Callum was in a very strange space. He was 24 years old, just lost the father that he was trying so desperately to make a relationship with. And it's very impossible to try and do that with somebody who's dying of alcoholism. And he was dying of it long before he went into hospital, as we all know. So I thought, this boy is surrounded by the wrong people doing the wrong things. I have to go home and give him a bit of motherly advice.
Yeah.
So I did. Came home.
Good enough excuse. Because the reason I asked that, because when I was in Seattle playing in Seattle, George was down the road. I'd love to have played in the same team as him, but we got together the odd occasion when we played against one another. It's a shame that he had to go there because he was still the best in the world, even at that time. But I would never have left Seattle if I hadn't have been fired.
I was just going to ask you that. I was just going to say, where was the place you preferred to be? In America, playing for Seattle, or maybe Chelsea or Arsenal? Which one?
Well, I to tell the truth, Angie, I look at life. I wrote a couple of books. I look at life and like a jigsaw puzzle, as I think we all might do at times. And I take my best club, my best manager, my best team, my best ground. The best location would have been Seattle. That would have been that. My best ground would have been, I love playing at White Hart Lane. I don't know what George would have picked, Old Trafford maybe, or he would have picked some other ground probably the ground where he scored 7 goals. And then I'd pick my best players, and my best manager would have been the Stoke City manager, and took him to Seattle and put him in the chair there. And it's that's the way I work my life out. But because there was, and the great shame, and George is a great example of this, which never helped him, was the nightclub. And I'm saying that, Angie, because there weren't enough money in it. Had the Bosman ruling come in and we got paid like they do today, that wouldn't have happened.
No, because he would have been surrounded by managers, agents, mental health therapists, all kinds of nutritionists and blah, blah, blah. Today, they're coddled. George wasn't coddled. He was thrown out onto the pitch and then thrown out the door. He wasn't coddled like they are today.
No, of course he wasn't.
What, Angie, can I ask, what was the level of his representation when you first got to meet him and first got to know him?
How do I put this in a really nice way? A bunch of people.
If I can wait a minute, but Ken Stanley was his first agent, wasn't he?
Oh, yes, I never met that one. I met them LA, and it was people who were newspaper men who said, "I'll look after you, George." There was no quality. There was no agent. There was a friend who did it for him. Took his money. I'll give you a prime example. Okay. So long story short, I'm in LA working with Cher. My mum calls me up and says, "Ange, would you please talk to this boy? He's driving me mad." So I said, "Okay, give him my number." He calls and he says, "Don't hang up. Will you marry me?" I'm in LA, he's in England. So I said, okay. Now, why I said okay, I don't know, because I think the universe just wanted us to come together, because they wanted Callum to do the job he's now doing for the children of alcoholics. And that is my firm belief. Sounds as crazy as it sounds. I believe that was a universe saying, I'm going to bring these two people together, and they're going to make somebody who's going to help the future children of alcoholics. And that's what my son does. So I think he and I came together. It was a disaster. It was lovely. It was a nightmare. It was wonderful. He was a drunk. So there was nobody to look after him, as you asked, Ken. But on the day that we were going to meet to get married, I had to get a taxi to the airport to meet them all at the airport. And this man comes up to me and says, "You can't sit next to him. You can't talk to him because we've sold a deal to one of the newspapers." Now, I'm 23 years old. I know nothing about what he's talking about. I didn't know you could sell deals to newspapers. I certainly never saw any of that money. I used to have to pay for George to go to the dentist because he was so useless with his pennies, bless him. So I don't know. There was nobody looked after him except me at the best I could. And that obviously wasn't good enough. So nobody could look after George. They tried. He had a Scotsman that tried
McMurdo.
Who ended up taking him to court and taking the name and everything, because George messed that up as well. You couldn't control George. Sadly, he was a very sweet, naive, in a way, spoilt little baby who never actually grew up.
Well, along those lines, people ask me about him, and we used to live literally 100 yards from each other. I never had George's phone number, he never had mine, but when we used to see each other, it was like two good friends meeting. We wasn't never best friends, but I don't think George really had a best friend.
No. Did you go out together?
Never.
Oh.
Never.
Now
No.
it's interesting to me because you managed to sober up.
Occasionally.
And you've done a fantastic job. You have come through, and there's not enough praise for somebody who's strong enough, powerful enough within their soul, within themselves, to do that, because not many people do, not enough people do. And I just wish George had, but he didn't, and that's all there is to it. He shouldn't be dead. You and he should be chatting now.
I know. I mean, I was the first one up the hospital on the day when I found out about it. And funny enough, where I was supposed to go and have an operation this week, the Cromwell, and Phil Hughes come to the girl on the desk, said, Mr. Best won't be seeing nobody. I said, well, don't worry about it. Give me a piece of paper. Let me write a little note on it and to wish him well, because I'd been in hospital for a year myself, having been hit by the car and then the coma and all this. I knew what George was going to go through. Hell. And I was just began to write this note, and Phil Hughes came walking towards me. I'd never met him. He was George's agent then, and he said, George, we'll see you.
The best agent George ever had was Phil, but that was after I'd gone in later life, so I never really knew him. But he was the best one for George.
Well, it was probably like with George, like playing a game of darts, wasn't it? One had to stick, And Phil turned out being good friends with myself, with my friend Martin Knight, who lives in Epsom near him. And Phil's a good fellow. Manchester United mad. He loved George as a player, loved him as a man, which was a great start. He done well out of George. Everybody done well out of George, except George getting what? Yeah. Well,
I did. I have a son.
I mean, your situation with George, with this we could do 25 podcasts, couldn't we? It just so happened that all the girls were mad over him. But there was one thing I must say about George, and I think he's got a reputation, but it's a wrong reputation.
Which one?
Well, the one for chasing women and being around women all the time.
He didn't have to chase them. They chased him.
Well, when I weren't there, because I'd have had the leftovers, Angie, trust me. But every time I see him, he was in company of, mainly in the Feeney. He had people hangers on. But I see him one day. I was one of the last times, I invited him and Callum to one of my book signings, because Callum knew my son quite well. And I remember he came out, and the Sky cameras come down. I was in this lovely restaurant in Knightsbridge. It was my book signing, and George actually wrote the foreword for me. But he would have been invited anyway. And all of a sudden, I see this cameraman point the camera at George with the glass of wine in view. So I grabbed hold of the glass of wine and moved it out of the way so there was no booze near him. And your Callum said to my Alan, did you see what your dad just done? He said, well, my father loves your father. He's trying to protect him. He doesn't like the media. They've done the same to me, and there's no way. They didn't come down there for my book signing. They come down because to catch George with a glass of wine. That's how nasty they were.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Evil people.
Yes.
People.
Yes, without question.
Because without saying on the subject too long, I bumped into a couple of times, and I caught him one day in the Big Easy, and he was having a steak.
Oh, yeah.
In the Big Easy, yeah. Where I used to go into when it was wild in happy hour. But George, this was one lunchtime. He was the only one in the restaurant eating a steak with one glass of wine. And I was round the bar and I popped my head round. I said, "You're right." He went, "Yeah, lovely to see you." I said, "Good, you look good," and blah, blah, blah. I said, "Look, I'm at the bar with a couple of my pals." I says, "Before you go, just come and say hello," and off you go. Didn't invite him for a drink or nothing, you know. And he stopped at the bar and they were over the moon to meet him, and always polite as he was. And he stayed for one glass of wine. And because it was happy hour, they gave him 2 glasses of wine. And he had half the glass of wine and he walked out.
Good,
So,
because he was.
well, yeah,
he had
you know,
wet
because
brain by then.
yeah, because he was trying his best, and he, you know, that's why I'm saying he had the wrong reputation. I hate people that, when people ask me about George, I say he was the loveliest bloke and the greatest player in the world, and that's it, full stop. I don't ever.
You know, Alan, yes, I agree with you, but I have to say it's very difficult for me because on Facebook and all these places, people send pictures and say, "Just remember my football." And I always think to myself, that's so easy for you to say, because in his time, George did so much damage to so many people emotionally, and he's got so much to answer for. So to actually say, "Oh, just remember me for my football and what a good guy I was," he was a bugger. He was an absolute bugger. And he wasn't thoughtful.
You sound like my wife talking about me.
Well, I'm just, I tell the truth. I don't know how to do anything.
Yeah, well, that was the truth. Yeah.
He wasn't thoughtful. He wasn't kind. The fact that I send George home from California. We've just had a new baby. We've got a brand new house, and he's painted a beautiful mural on the wall. And then he disappears for 2 weeks. Now, the club at that point have said enough already, that they put him through rehab. They've done their best. And so they fired him. So I said, "Babes, you have to go home and you have to get some money so we can pay the mortgage." He said, "Okay, I will." So he comes home, goes and stays with my mum and dad, gets himself settled. And then I don't hear anything from him for a long time. So I get a phone call one day, and it's a newspaper. And he said, "Did you know your husband was living with Miss World?" And I said, "No, hum a few bars." It's like, so I find that out. The next thing I know is I'm being evicted from my house. And I'm thinking, now, where is George? Why is he not calling me? Why is he not sending money for the house, so at least we can sell it and not lose it?
And move on, yeah.
But he didn't. And because he had moved on, but he'd forgotten about his wife and his new baby. So that kind of stuff puts a little black spot on your heart. And it's so difficult to remember the sweet, kind, generous soul that he was when he'd had a couple, because you remember the things he did to you when he shouldn't have done them.
Well, you're talking from the heart, and you're talking to someone that loved him, and I'm sure he loved you. That was quite obvious, but yeah, I mean, that was
Here's you wanting to do a lovely, fun, but I have to remind people, he was all those wonderful things, and we will always love him for those wonderful things. But he was a bugger as well, a first-class bugger. And he was a baby who never grew up. He never accepted responsibility, and that's the thing I found the hardest. I think that's why I left him, because when I had Callum, I suddenly thought to myself, I can't look after 2 babies. One has to go. George,
can I take you back to the very beginning when you first met? I mean, what brought you together in the first place?
Okay, so I was working with Cher, and I lived in her house in Beverly Hills. And we got a phone call one day to say there's the phone call was from a man called, can't remember. He was Elizabeth Taylor's boyfriend. He was a German guy. And he said, I'm having a party for an Englishman called George Best. So I said, well, first of all, he's an Irishman. And he said, yes, yes, yes. He said, would you like to come because you're English? I said, of course I would. So I get one of my girlfriends and off we go to the party. And I walk in, there's 5 Englishmen standing in the corner, all with their glasses of beer and talking to each other. And there's 50 women all over the place, right? All these beautiful Hollywood girls. And I looked at my girlfriend and I said, time to go. So I went over and I said, hello, Mr. Best, nice to meet you. I see you're going to be fine tonight. Have a good time. And I left. I, at the time, was dating this man called Ricky Martin, who was the son of Dean Martin. So I called up Ricky and I said, let's go for dinner. And off we went. About 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from the same guy to say, Mr. Best would like you to come to his bar in Redondo Beach, Hermosa Beach, for another party. So I thought, something about that little Irishman, let's go. So I went, I got all dressed up because I was a Hollywood girl at the time. This is in the early 70s, right? So I get all dressed up and off I go. And I walk in looking fabulous. And there sitting at the bar is one little Irishman in flip-flops and shorts and no other people. So I said, where's the party? And he just gave me a grin. And I realized there was no party. He just wanted me to come down. As we're chatting away and laughing and having a nice time, this girl walks past me, throws a glass of wine at me. George had neglected to tell his girlfriend that he had invited me down. Now, all the bells and whistles and alarms should have gone off then, shouldn't they? They should have, right there and then, but they didn't. And that was it. But that was it. And Sherry used to say to me, who is this guy you keep going to see every weekend? So then one time, he came up to the big house and he sat outside for about 2 hours because he didn't know how to work the buzzer to get in, right? Bless him. So eventually he comes in. The housekeeper says to me, there's somebody at the gate. There's a man in a car at the gate. Shall I call the security? So I went and looked at the computer. I said, oh, no, that's George. Let him in. And he came in and couldn't handle it at all and got completely drunk, and just left and drove home. I don't, but until my son was born, we stayed together through thick and thin. Let me tell you. So that's when I realized that Callum was meant to be. He was meant to be here to do a job, and he's doing it. And that's my most proud moment. I don't like to think that I was just with George and wasted all those years for nothing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't.
Well, the other side of it, you did very well for yourself, didn't you? I mean, I'm talking about, you're talking about, I knew you were friends with Cher, but you was in, you had your own gym, did you? Have a gym?
Oh, yes. When I came back here to London, I, hold on one second. I'm at my Ames. You ask them to. I'm at my this hotel that I come to do my work, and I bring my PA with me, and we we get all our work done in this beautiful old hotel called Danesfield House in Henley, and I just love it because it is a very as you can see from the wood things paneling, it's really beautiful. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
So they show people around, and so people just came in. So Amy told them, "No, get out." I love it. She's good at that. Where were we? What was we talk? What we were talking about? Oh, I did well for myself. Yeah, I did.
Your gymnasium.
But you know, I came home to this country to rescue Callum.
Yeah.
So I left my Malibu, I left my work, everything, and came home. And to the rain, the grey, the sour faces, the unhappiness, because it's a tiny little country, tiny little island. So people were blinkers, and they don't have big expressed thoughts. They have little blinker thoughts because they live on a little tiny island. And for the most part, they grizzle. So we had a lot. I came home from a very positive, lovely LA, which it was then in the 70s. It's not so much today, and 80s to, I used to say, at my first interview I ever did, I said, does nobody smile? But then I realized they don't, because the sun doesn't shine very often. So it's cloudy and grey and rainy most of the time. So there's not very many happy days. When there is, everybody's outside with the barbecues and enjoying it, but it doesn't last very long.
No.
So I thought, okay, I got to work. I need a job. I got to do something. So I put an ad in the paper and I said, I'm here. Let me give Hollywood ladies, Henley ladies, Hollywood bodies. They didn't want them. So there I am, right? I'm in a village hall in the middle of this little place called Bix in Henley, just on the outside of Henley. Bix, it was called. The village hall is this wooden, tiny little hall, damp, smelly, cold, all wood, horrible place. And there I am, trying to give 12 brave Henley ladies a Hollywood body. And I just thought, what am I doing here? So never mind, here I am. We got to make this work. So we did. And from there, I wangled my way into a studio, had a really nice exercise studio. And from the studio, I found a place, Henley Business School had a gym, but you couldn't really call it a gym. It was a room with some treadmills. But there was potential there, and you could make it bigger if you spent some money on it. So I said, I'll build you a gym, a real good gym. They said, okay. They wouldn't pay me anything. So I got this wonderful man who had a business in Henley to donate some money to build this beautiful gym. So my partner and I, he was a brilliant exercise person, so he knew all the equipment to get. And we went and got all the equipment and built this beautiful gym, the best gym in Henley, on the river in these gorgeous grounds in Henley. 10 years I worked there every single day in my gym, and I absolutely loved it. The problem being, when you work for a corporation like the Reading University, and it was right at the time of COVID when my 10-year lease was due to be renewed. So I thought, they can't say no to this. They get good reviews on it every single month. They're bound to say yes. So at the beginning of the year, I asked them, I said, are you going to renew? Are you going to renew? We don't know, Ange, we don't know. So I thought, well, why don't you know? So they said, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID. So I said, well, it'll be fine. It's me telling them what to do. So 2 months before they're due to sign, they say no. So they gave me 2 months to find a new location, move thousands of tons worth of equipment. Couldn't be done.
Yeah.
And so they evicted me. I sent lawyers letters. I said, please give me 1 more month. Let me find a space. Nope. So I lost that. And when I lost that, I went into a depression, and it was awful. Not really a depression, but I had about a year when I thought, what am I going to do with myself now? Because I don't like to not be busy. So we had started right at the last year, knowing something else needed to be done. We started this little company called Absolute Best, CBD, because we, being the health expert for centuries, I knew that this CBD was going to be a game changer now that we were allowed to have it again for most people with any health issue, because you have in your body an endocannabinoid system, and that system has receptors all over, in your brain, in your joints, in your organs, in your reproductive. It needs CBD. Now, years and years and years ago, we used to all eat CBD. We used to eat our cannabinoids because the animals ate it, because it grew, the hemp grew everywhere. So the animals ate it. We ate the animals, we got CBD. So our CBD was filled up and we were very healthy. But then, of course, Rothschild took over, called it alternative medicine, started Big Pharma, and it all got shut down. This was in the late 50s. Just recently, they've allowed us to grow hemp again. So now we can have CBD again. So I started this company, and I wanted to tell people, this was 5 years ago, about CBD and how good it was for your mental health, for your anxiety, for everything. So I started that. So now I am full into my little CBD company. It's taken 5 years to educate, because I had to educate everybody as to what it was, because nobody knew. So it's hard work, but I'm still working.
So
That's your question answered in a very roundabout way, but answered nonetheless.
so you're busy again.
Have to be, don't we? I cannot sit and just disintegrate. I mean, I'm only 72. I've got another good 20 years if I have my way.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever been tempted to go back to US?
Yes, especially now.
Yeah.
This poor, I'm sad for children being born today. Yes, very tempted.
Yeah.
It will depend on what His Lordship Callum wants to do,
Yeah.
where he wants to go. He's tempted. We'll see. I don't mind where I am. I'm happy wherever I decide I'm going to stay. I'm happy, and I'll make the most of it. Despite the weather, despite the miserable faces, I'll make the most of it. So we'll see. I could end up in Portugal. I could end up in Spain. I want to go somewhere sunny where my joints feel fluid and I'm smiling every day. Do you know what I mean?
I understand that. Yeah. Yeah. I spent a lot of my time when I left Seattle in Tampa Bay. And I loved it down there, but that's no good no more.
No.
They've kind of ruined the USA for me.
Yeah.
I went back to Seattle. It wasn't very good. I must ask you another thing. Being in that world with Sher, did you come across, I mentioned him earlier, Terry O'Neill. Did you ever come across Terry?
Yeah. I met him. I think he took a picture of George and I once. Yes.
Yeah, he would have done, yeah. Because he married Faye Dunaway.
He done away, yeah.
Yeah.
He's gone now, isn't he? Terry's gone?
Yes, he has. He has.
Oh. See, that's the other thing, isn't it? As you age, you see all the people that you knew and grew with and read about passing. And it's like, Jesus, you don't want it to happen. You don't realize you're getting old until you see everybody's dying. And then you think, Jesus, I'm getting old.
Well, the wonderful thing about this podcast this morning is going to go out to a lot of people, and you look great. You look great. You really do. I don't know. I'm sure Tony will agree with that, and everybody watches. So that's a very positive thing. And to be the only woman ever going to be on the show, you're going to be the best looking woman.
No, don't say that.
Yes, I insist. So I can't stand women talking about football.
Yes.
But they're taking jobs from people. I mean, my son, for instance, is very good. I know Callum started trying to play, didn't he?
He wanted to, definitely wanted to, and was good enough to, but he couldn't take that pressure. Wouldn't have been worth it. No.
Angie, that would have been impossible, surely.
Impossible.
How could you possibly live up to,
especially with the British newspapers?
Well, absolutely, and I remember way back when, just after George, when Johan Cruyff, who was probably on the same level as George.
George's favourite, yeah.
I mean, George must have thought he's the best player in the world. And,
he did.
And Johan probably said that about George, but I played against Johan Cruyff five times. Wonderful, like the great George, but
magical.
But his son went to Manchester. What I'm going to say is, Ferguson took Johan Cruyff's son to Old Trafford, and they wouldn't put Cruyff on his shirt.
Yeah.
They put Geordie on his shirt.
Yeah.
Just good, but otherwise it would have been embarrassing, Yeah. And this kid, he I don't know. Ferguson was a very, very. I mean, if George had been in that time when Ferguson was manager, they I don't know what would have happened. The world would have erupted. Ferguson was that good, and I don't know how he would have handled George because.
Well, that's a big if, because he wasn't there.
Yes, absolutely. But I think. And I was thinking this morning when Tony called me about yourself, and I was trying to think, because he was such a loner. I've never met a loner such as George. Every time I met him, he was on his own, basically. And I was laughing to myself about him proposing to you. It must have been quite amazing, because for him to do something like that, it was these miraculous things happen, don't they?
Yeah. Well, the universe has a way of making things happen.
Yeah. And he was the picture don't do him justice, but he was 24, 25 then. But the USA thing as well, which that didn't help, did it? Really, your marriage, surely?
No, but it gave him the lifestyle that he wanted, which was relaxed, shorts, heat, no pressure. And you, yeah, it gave him the lifestyle he wanted, and we could go to the supermarket together. He will push the basket, I'd put the food in. We could do that. Couldn't do that here.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember our first week in Seattle, and it was a dream. Nobody knew you was. And that was probably a problem that Georgie could go and get drunk and nobody knew it was George Best. Whereas here he had no chance. But
yes,
not that you wanted to do that all the time, but we had a ball in Seattle and nobody knew who we were, and we were the best team in America at this time. We broke all the records, and but we were full of English in our team, who George had played against, the likes of Alan Hudson and people like that, who was our boss. But I remember playing against George first time. He played for San Jose in the Kingdom in Seattle. And I think he might have just went to San Jose. We won 4-0, and George was spent his whole time if he was on grass or something, he was on some kind of drug. He was spent his whole time because the team he was playing for was no good, and they weren't good enough to play with him, kind of thing, And I remember there was a time in San Jose, and I never tell this to anyone, but
you're about to tell it to a few million people.
Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anyway, because I don't care about them millions of people anyway, because they've never done me any favors.
Absolutely.
And most of them people that thought it was great getting George drunk weren't doing him any favors. So that wasn't good. But I remember we played at San Jose indoor, and I think it might have been the night that we met. I don't know. I wouldn't swear on it. But George, after the game, we went into the players' bar, and he was standing on the edge of the players' bar, and he was off the drink. He had a Coca-Cola, and he was swigging this Coke. And I kind of looked at him, he smiled at me, and I smiled at him, because I smiled at him because I used to think, like when I went to his club in Manchester, where'd you get these looks from, kind of thing, And every 2 or 3 minutes he'd bend down, he had a beer under the counter, and I thought, George, either do it or don't do it, why worry about people, but then obviously the same problem pops up, doesn't it? But it's so great to have you on and listen and hear, it's better than loose women and all that, isn't it? Because we got two great subjects. But
Tony, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
I did, and I know you've got other things to do, so I'll make this the last question of the podcast.
Unless it's the one about Jules nearly joining Chelsea.
Okay.
I've got my peppermint tea. I just had to put it down.
I hope I've not misquoted you here, but this is a great quote, and I'd like you to maybe expand on it and explain what you meant by this. But you once said, allegedly, that you didn't realise 6 years of marriage would last a lifetime.
Oh, Christ, mate, you know, here I am, 30, he's been dead 20 years. I left him 30 years ago, and you still want to talk about him. So, yes, that few years of marriage has lasted a lifetime. But you know what? Bloody brilliant.
Well, having said that, I was quite excited that you came on today and wanted to talk about you and find out what you were doing, because you were for me, you were the only woman for him in my eyes. And although we never discussed it, I'd never met anyone like George. I'd never met anybody that.
And you never will.
He never spoke about football.
No.
We never once spoke about football. We never once spoke about women. We never spoke about. We just, how are you? And it was like, I don't know. I suppose we were better. We were much the same. Whereas we like to express ourselves on the field. That's where we were best doing what we were really good at. Him far on a different level than me, but a pleasure to be on the same field as him, and a pleasure to be his friend without being. I wouldn't like to have been his best friend with that problem.
No.
Because I wouldn't have been able to help him, because I like going out. But I do know when my first marriage went all wrong, and she went into fitness similar to yourself. She's still in it now. She will be on the phone to me when she watches this, and she say, "What about me coming on?" And I say, "Look, there's only one woman ever going to be on there, and it's not you." So it's really fabulous that you came on and look so great, and look so well and healthy. And because in these times, we all know, everyone goes, like you said earlier on, I'm 73. I should have died when I was 46. I got hit by a car, and they give me the last rites, and I bounced back from that, and I come back, and then, but I'm very lucky, as you are, as you say, you got Callum. I got 3 sons. One of my sons was the manager of the USA in the last World Cup. Did you know that?
Oh no! How exciting is that?
Yes, he was actually assistant manager in Qatar. I didn't get to go over, but he's my second son, who was born in Seattle. He's worked his way up, gone out all on his own.
Bless. Excellent.
And he's very much his own man.
It's in the blood.
Yeah. So I can see why you're so proud of Callum. And
I'm in a hotel, right? And there's 3 lovely ladies over there, and they're listening. One's just gone and told her husband that I'm talking to you. She wants to come and say a quick hello.
No.
Do you mind?
Of course.
He don't bring his wife on.
It's very sweet. I said,
well, you couldn't plan this, could you?
she's all embarrassed, bless her. Hold on, let me move this.
Don't be embarrassed. Come and say hello to Alan.
Yeah. Come and say hello to Alan.
I can't believe I'm back to you.
Yeah.
Just out swimming pool.
Oh, don't worry about that.
Oh, can I sit here?
Yes, please do.
Hello, Alan.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are
She's
you?
gone and done it, hasn't she? I said she'll be the only woman ever on my show, and then she brings you on. She's defied me. So do you like your football?
Kind of, yes. I'm not a massive fan, I have to say. But I will sit and watch a good football match.
All right, today. But can you remember watching George play? No, you're too young.
Oh, I wish. Yes, I can definitely remember playing George playing. And I know who you are. I know you used to play for Chelsea.
Yes.
And my husband is a true football fan.
He's yes.
Can you tell us?
He'll be pleased that you've been on the show today.
Oh, he won't even believe it.
Well, that's great. It's great.
So he's a West Ham fan, unfortunately.
Well, he must have some.
Unfortunately.
Well, like I just said to Angie, George was the greatest, and I was very fortunate to have George as a friend, and Bobby Moore also.
My husband's hero.
Bobby was on. Bobby and George were pretty much on the same level as regards the same on the field and the same off the field. He was George was a gentleman. Bobby was a gentleman. He was a great fella. He helped me get to America. He helped me in my career. He helped me to try and get me in the England team. But that didn't go down too well with the manager because and the amazing thing about it, which I would say, I know Angie's listening, but had George been English, he wouldn't have got a game for England,
Really?
They wouldn't have picked him. They wouldn't have realised that. They wouldn't have known how to play him in the England team. He would just been far too good. An England manager wouldn't have known how to manage him.
No, definitely not.
That's why this country is so robotic. And when, apart from Ferguson building that great Manchester United team, there's never been another George.
No, absolutely not.
I think we all agree.
Thanks
for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The check's in the post.
Thank you, Angie.
How sweet is that? See, you've got all the ladies here loving it, bless. How sweet.
Well, yes.
You should have more, babes. You should have more women on, not to talk about football, just to talk about life as they're older. Women of my age and these ladies, they're a bit younger than me, unfortunately for them. Women, just to talk about how life was then and how football was revered because it was all we had as working class people, like your book, Working Class Ballet.
Yeah.
You should have more on, and especially the wives of, to talk, because it's interesting stuff. These women went through a lot. They every Saturday night they'd have to sit and watch the telly with the husband because that's all they did.
I do agree. I go up to the level of footballers' wives. That they have this show, but it's nothing like this kind of conversation. But I don't want women on who are in the game.
No.
They got out there. Absolutely, they shouldn't be in the game.
Alan, just hold your silly old self for 1 minute. Now, just remember, watching women play football is phenomenal.
Yes.
My son has a women's football team.
Wouldn't he?
Yeah, and when and when I go and watch them, it is phenomenal to watch. The reason I say that is because today's football, if a bird feather falls on them, they fall over and they start crying. These women, they battle each other, they do it, and it keeps moving. It doesn't stop. I see a football game today and I think, oh, for God's sakes. But watching the women play, they seem to be a lot tougher. The game moves a lot quicker. I just love it. I absolutely love it. But I'm with you. They can talk about their own football. I don't want them talking about the boys playing football.
Well, absolutely. It's I think you'll agree.
Careful, don't be too misogynistic or whatever that word is.
No,
you don't want the girls going to say, how dare you?
So, no, it's not that. I think I was the youngest person I've ever known to bang the drum for women's football. I see a girl play around in Chelsea one day as good as anyone I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I used to say, girls, don't. My granddaughter, I was talking to her mum the other day. She should have kept playing. She has got the Hudson genes.
Yeah.
But it's like the woman, and one of the most admired women ever in my lifetime has been Billie Jean King.
Yeah.
She took over women's tennis. She did everything to get me equal this, equal that, but she never once poked her nose into the men's game.
No, quite right too. Yeah,
and
I get
that for me, that for me is a great example that these people should think of who do television shows.
Yeah.
It's
No, I
like
agree.
it's like watching two girls. We're looking at you now. Can you imagine? I watched a thing on telly. There were two girls boxing, smashing the life out of each other. Come on.
Why?
Why? What's the world? Why has the world brought this in? You know what? Because they're making money. Would you want your daughter walking around? You know,
With a smashed nose and broken teeth? No,
No,
thanks.
ridiculous. So it's, you know, that's the kind of man I am. I'm a man's man.
You're an old school guy. You're an old school guy. I get it.
And Angie, I've had more interesting conversations with women about modern day football than I have with men. And the reason I say that is because they actually watch the game. People like him above you, Tony, they only watch one team. They're biased. All football supporters are so biased, it's pointless having a conversation with them. But women actually watch the game.
Did you see Prince Philip? No,
Yes,
Prince William.
the other night,
said
yeah.
When he talked about, I thought that was really good. I thought
Yeah.
he was brilliant. I was pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a working man's game, and he's, bless him. I was more power to him for saying
Yeah,
or
yeah.
being. I love that.
Yeah, and I hope Aston Villa gets smashed again this week. Anyway,
Well-
it's been great having you on. Really made my day, and I can tell my friends anyway, and they say really. And I hope you don't mind me saying, but talking about Terry O'Neill, you've got the Faye. You have the Faye Dunaway look as well, don't you? Has anyone ever said that to you?
No,
You have.
but thank you. She was beautiful.
She was beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
I
Terry
never
did-
think of myself like that.
Well, no, you have the kind of look. You're Angie, you know. Aren't you?
Thank
Yeah, it's wonderful having you on. Really,
And,
and I think George would agree with this conversation. And
yes,
you loved him, I loved him.
Yeah.
In two different ways.
we all loved him.
But I
There
think,
wasn't much to not love except when he was a bad boy.
yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you, darling. Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
It was an absolute pleasure. And God bless you and look after yourself. What, my
Thank
sweet?
you.
What do you want to say?
Well, I know you're in a rush to go. Can I ask one
No,
more?
I'm not in a rush.
You're not in a rush. Okay. Well, I mean, you've talked very movingly about your time with George and the time before George and time after George. Life could never have been dull with him, surely.
Yeah.
Never dull. No. Good God, no. But, oh, your emotions went like this constantly. Yes, never dull.
Yeah. But not the dull.
He was a one of a kind. There will never ever be anybody else like him. Nobody could ever play him in a movie or anything because he was an absolute individual, one of a kind icon. And he was very intelligent. He was a very intelligent guy. He could do the Times cryptic crosswords in minutes. Didn't even understand them, and he would just do them.
Yeah.
He was very intelligent. Never got the opportunity to use that intelligence, which was sad. Wasn't grown up enough or developed enough emotionally to be able to control his drinking or to be able to stop. Because even after he got his new liver, he went and drank. Because I believe that when he got his new liver and his brain started to clear and all the memories would come back of all the things he'd done to people, that guilt would send him back to the drink to where he could forget about it all again. That's why I think he went back to drinking, because he had a lovely wife, Alex, at the time. He had a new liver. People were making a fuss of him again. There was no reason to start drinking again. But I think the guilt in his little heart and not having the ability to emotionally deal with it, because he wasn't that developed emotionally, being this 16-year-old from Belfast who was just thrown onto Manchester United. And so I don't think, he had so much potential that was unused, and not just the potential on the field.
But I agree 1,000,000%. And it's only a one in a million finger that had the money been around in them days. In the modern day footballer is completely different from our day.
Yes, yes.
They want for nothing. I don't know. I mean, so I've found that so many players. It was in our day, you know, they used to take a pub when they finish football. They become a publican, and they get fat and they say ugly and all this. And it's not. But that wasn't their
Growing
fault.
old.
We had well, there was no money, Angie, was there? You know, I mean, you saying that about having to pay the mortgage, that he should have had millions and millions and millions and millions. And in the modern day game, he would be the multi. Forget David Beckham. You know, there was David Beckham must say to everyone, "I wore number 7." George Best wore that. Well, George wore number 11. So we can get that. Forget that one, David. You know. He wasn't in the same league. He wasn't. No.
Not football.
No.
Wise in his day, handsome wise.
He's a good-looking boy, and I like him. He went up in my estimation when he went on Del Boy. Did you see the episode when he done Del Boy?
No.
And that was very, very funny. And he played himself. And I've never met him. But
well, see, don't you find it they're very what's that word? Depreciating. They
Self-deprecating.
Yes. Everybody does that. Footballers do that. Old school to a degree, because that's who we are. We British. Anyway, boys, I shall love you and leave you.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
And you, and good luck in the future.
Thank you, and stay well and stay healthy.
And
Both.
you, darling. Thank you.
Bless.
Thanks for coming on. Bless you.
Thank you, Angie.
You're my pleasure.
It's been a delight to have you on.